The night in Florence begins like a whisper. The amber glow of lanterns flickers softly against weathered stone, and the gentle hum of a lute in the distance floats through the narrow alleyways. Somewhere beneath the rising silhouettes of tiled rooftops, the city exhales. It is the 1480s, and though the day's commotion has passed, the heart of the Renaissance beats quietly in the evening air. In a modest courtyard tucked between merchant homes, vines hang over an iron gate. Olive trees sway gently in the night breeze. The streets are lined with cobblestones that have seen the sandals of artists, philosophers, apprentices, and dreamers. There is peace now. The marketplace has gone silent, and the voices of vendors and buyers have become memories echoing in the dark. A young apprentice named Matteo sits by a small fountain, sketchbook open across his lap. His candle flickers as he etches another figure into the worn parchment. An idea born from the streets, from a statue, from the flight of a bird. His master, an older painter of some local fame, has long since retired for the night. But Matteo, caught in thought and inspiration, listens to the hush of the world around him, his pencil dancing softly. You can almost hear the slow scratch of his quill and the distant notes of a viol gently played from a neighboring home. The Renaissance wasn't only grand sculptures and sweeping cathedrals, it was also moments like this, quiet, deeply personal, filled with imagination. The nearby cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, looms under the starlight. Its massive dome, Brunelleschi's masterpiece, glows faintly in the moon's gaze. Travelers resting under archways pass stories between them. Some talk of a new thinker named Leonardo da Vinci and his strange flying machine sketches. Others gossip about Medici politics. But even these words are spoken like secrets, wrapped in velvet by the softness of the night. In a perfumer's home down the street, rose petals and sandalwood steep in warm oil. An older woman, once a healer, keeps notes in a small leather-bound book, remedies passed down from her grandmother. She listens to the night with reverence, sipping wine, tracing the stars outside her window. To her, the Renaissance is not just art, it is curiosity, memory, the bridging of the natural and the divine. Florence sleeps, but it never truly stops thinking. Bells ring slowly from a distant tower, marking the final hour before midnight. A dog barks. A cart rattles as it makes its way home. Everything feels suspended between time, between old and new, between sleep and waking. The air is thick with wood smoke and lavender, and above it all, the constellations shine like painted icons across the black canvas of the sky. As you sit with this moment, this night, you can feel the rhythm of Renaissance life pulsing softly beneath the silence. Ideas bloom in stillness. Art begins in shadow. Beauty finds its voice when the world is quiet. Venice, too, has its own quiet music at night. The lapping of water against wooden pilings, the faint creak of gondolas bobbing in the moonlight, and the distant toll of the Campanile's bell, these are the city's nocturnes. The Renaissance here flows not just in ink and paint, but in trade winds and silk threads, in coded messages and mirrored masks. Inside a modest workshop near the edge of the Grand Canal, a candle burns low. Its soft flame flickers against the curved glass of a window, throwing orange reflections onto wooden walls. A glassblower, old and careful, shapes molten color into form. He's done this for decades, maybe more. His hands, calloused and slow, move with the certainty of someone who has crafted beauty through repetition. The workshop smells of smoke and salt, of oil and molten sand. Drawers are filled with pigments, minerals, powders, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cinnabar from Spain. His tools hang neatly, tongs, pipes, shears, and calipers. Each has a place. Each tells a story. He is alone now, save for the hush of the lagoon outside. Earlier, his apprentices had chattered and laughed and fumbled with materials, but now they sleep. And in their absence, the silence feels sacred. Tonight, he's working on a lamp, an intricate swirl of cobalt and gold. It isn't a commission. It's just for himself. Something to pass on. As he turns the piece slowly, the glow inside it catches something ethereal, like trapped starlight. He sighs, content, and sets it down to cool. Elsewhere in the city, gondoliers have tied up their boats. The laughter of travelers has faded. In a nearby villa, a young girl writes a letter to her cousin in Florence, describing a new painting she's seen in a church, the way the Madonna's face seemed to know her secrets. She writes by candlelight, careful not to blot the page. Her mother calls softly for bed, and she folds the paper, slipping it into an envelope sealed with wax. On the canals, the water shimmers with reflections. Buildings lit from within like golden lanterns floating on ink. The scent of wine and rosemary drifts through the air from a late supper. Lofi rhythms of the night, rippling water, creaking shutters, the low murmur of a poet rehearsing lines under his breath. Back in the workshop, the old glassblower steps outside. He leans on the railing and watches the canal. A breeze lifts the hem of his tunic, and he closes his eyes. Across the water, he sees the silhouette of the Doge's palace, its arches like teeth in the jaw of history. But there's peace in his heart. His work, however humble, is part of this great tide. His hands have shaped something lasting, even if the world never knows his name. He turns back inside, places the finished lamp on a shelf beside others, each one different, each one a chapter in a life told through light. Then he dims the candle, slides the bolt across the door, and lets the hush of Venice cradle him to sleep. Outside, the tide shifts. The Renaissance hums on. Milan rests beneath a quilt of night clouds, its streets dim and silvered under a waning moon. The grandeur of the Sforza castle lies in shadows, its towers watching the silent city like old sentinels. But not far from its walls, down a quiet alley paved in old stone, is a smaller fortress, a library. The library is not grand by size, but by soul. Shelves of thick, leather-bound volumes lean against each other like tired friends. Scrolls are rolled tightly and tied with twine. The scent of parchment, beeswax, and dust hangs in the air like incense. A lone lantern glows from within, painting golden light on the floor and flickering gently against the tall stained-glass windows. Inside, an elderly librarian named Angelo turns a page. His beard is gray and soft, his robe a faded navy. His fingers are marked with ink and age. He is not reading for study tonight, nor for duty. He's reading because he can't sleep, and because books, more than beds, bring him rest. Tonight, it's a collection of observations by Pliny, paired with the drawings of the newer thinkers, some by Leonardo himself, who once roamed these very halls. Angelo sighs. He's seen the city change. He's seen battles and treaties, painters and poets. But this library, like a heartbeat beneath it all, has stayed steady. The wooden clock on the wall ticks gently. Outside, the wind rustles through ivy. Somewhere in the distance, a cat knocks over a pot, and the librarian smiles, just a city reminder that the world is still breathing. Above the librarian's desk hangs a small, cracked globe, hand-painted, and not entirely accurate. Seas are too wide, some continents are missing. But that never mattered. What mattered were the questions it stirred. What else might lie beyond those lines? What stories are written in the stars? He leans back and looks out the arched window. The city is quieter now than it was decades ago. But ideas are louder. They're in the air. New machines, new philosophies, new dreams whispered in workshops and painted into chapels. He reaches for a small book, its spine worn thin, a collection of poetry passed down from scholar to scholar. He reads a few lines aloud, his voice barely more than a murmur. It blends with the night, soft, rhythmic, timeless. Outside, a young boy passes on silent feet, carrying bread for his family's morning stall. He glances at the glow in the library window, wonders briefly who stays up reading at this hour, then continues on. His footsteps echo once and vanish. The librarian snuffs the lamp slightly, dimming the flame. He doesn't need much light anymore. His eyes may be old, but his memory carries every story. He sits still, listening to the silence of the library like it's music. Each creak of the floorboard, each rustle of a turning page, it's all part of the melody. In a world driven by movement and invention, the library remains still. But stillness is not the absence of life. It's where ideas settle. Where they breathe. Where they begin. Padua doesn't boast the grandeur of Venice or the fame of Florence, but in the soft hours of the night, it hums with a wisdom all its own. The streets here are narrow, the buildings weathered, the rhythm slower. It is a city of students, thinkers, and healers, a place where the Renaissance took root in whispers, not fanfare. Just beyond the city's heart, behind tall iron gates, lies a hidden garden. Part of the old university, it's a medicinal plot where students learn the curative arts. By day, it is busy with scholars studying the humors, plants, and anatomy. But by night, it rests under starlight. In this hour, the garden is still. A stone path weaves through rows of herbs, rosemary, sage, valerian, rue. Small markers, handwritten and worn by time, name each plant with Latin precision. A fig tree sways in the breeze, its branches creaking softly. The air is thick with the scent of soil and jasmine. A young healer in training, Isabetta, walks the garden slowly. A lantern dangles from her hand, casting a circle of warm gold on the path. She's come to gather fresh chamomile for her mentor, who tends the sick at a nearby convent. But she's also come to breathe, to feel the hush of nature, the way leaves whisper in the moonlight, the way the night asks nothing of her. She kneels beside a lavender bush, careful not to disturb a sleeping snail curled in the damp earth. Her fingers brush the soft flowers, and she smiles. This quiet, is a kind of prayer. Inside the university halls, the lecture rooms are silent now. Chalk rests in bowls. Anatomy diagrams lie folded on tables. Candles burned earlier now flicker their last. Yet the ideas, those thoughts of Galen, of Aristotle, of newly questioned truths, they linger in the shadows, waiting for morning. A soft owl call cuts through the quiet, and Isabetta looks up. The stars above Padua are clear tonight, and she counts a few of the constellations she learned as a child. Her father, a mapmaker, used to say that the sky is a garden too, one that grows with questions instead of flowers. She tucks the chamomile into her pouch, pauses, and takes one last look at the garden. The plants seem to shimmer in the moonlight, each holding secrets from centuries past. She wonders how many students have walked these same paths, how many dreams were planted alongside these herbs. Before she leaves, she places a smooth stone beside the rosemary, a habit taught to her by an older student. A quiet offering. A sign of gratitude. As she steps back through the gate and closes it gently, the lantern light fades behind her, leaving the garden to its dreams. Padua breathes. It listens. And somewhere, deep in the roots of the plants and the minds of its people, the Renaissance stirs quietly on. The city of Nuremberg rests beneath a soft blanket of frost. Its steep rooftops and timber-framed homes gleam faintly under the stars. Far from the noise of the markets and the clang of blacksmiths, the streets have gone still, wrapped in quiet and time. The Renaissance has reached even here, north of the Alps, not in marble statues, but in precision gears and ticking brass. In a modest workshop tucked under a sloping roof, a watchmaker sits at his bench by candlelight. His name is Elias. His hands are steady, his eyes tired but sharp. The workshop is small, just a room lined with tools, tiny drawers, and glass domes covering intricate clockwork devices. The smell of oil, smoke, and metal lingers in the air. Outside, the town clock has just struck midnight. Elias doesn't flinch. He's heard the bells every night of his life. Instead, he bends over a small brass timepiece, adjusting a tiny spring with the end of a needle. Every tick he creates feels like a heartbeat. The city sleeps beyond his window. A layer of mist curls over the cobbled streets, and somewhere nearby, a candle flickers in a chapel window. Snow begins to fall gently, flakes catching on windowsills, melting on the eaves. Inside, it's warm, quiet, focused. Elias works slowly. This particular timepiece is not for sale. It's a gift, meant for his son, who studies engineering in Strasbourg. A gift to remind him of home, of rhythm, of patience. Elias believes that to make a perfect watch, one must listen, to silence, to metal, to the passage of time itself. His bench is a map of movement. Cogs of varying sizes lie like stars across its wooden surface. Some so small they vanish if dropped. Others large enough to feel in the palm of his hand. He aligns them carefully, breathing in rhythm with their imagined ticking. Behind him, the fire crackles. On the mantel rests a book of new ideas, texts from Italy, diagrams from the Low Countries. Innovations. Improvements. The Renaissance has shifted even the way time is seen. No longer just divine, now mechanical, knowable, trackable. Elias smiles as he fits the final piece into place. He winds the watch gently, and it ticks, a soft, satisfying sound. Like a whisper that says, "I'm alive." He sets it down, exhales, and stretches his fingers. His cat, curled on a nearby chair, lifts its head lazily before returning to sleep. Outside, the snowfall thickens, but the streets remain empty. Only the watchmaker is awake, his mind humming with thoughts of time, not just hours and minutes, but memories, hopes, and the brief yet brilliant flash that is a human life. He places the finished watch into a small wooden box lined with velvet. Then, with care, he writes a note and slips it inside. For Johann. A piece of time, from my hands to yours. Listen to the tick. It's saying, keep going. The candle burns low now, the wax curled in gentle folds. Elias snuffs it with practiced ease. Darkness falls over the workshop, save for the dim glow of the coals. In the cold hush of a Krakow winter, the stars feel closer, sharper, more awake. The rooftops of the city glint with frost, and the snow-dusted streets whisper beneath the boots of a lone night watchman. It is well past midnight, and the city sleeps. But above the quiet houses and darkened chapels, one window glows with a soft, steady light. Inside, an astronomer named Amelia leans over a desk littered with star charts, brass compasses, and half-filled notebooks. A small oil lamp warms the space around her, its glow flickering across parchment and glass lenses. Outside the window, the heavens stretch endlessly, an ocean of stars waiting to be measured, drawn, and understood. Her breath clouds the glass. She wipes it gently with a sleeve and adjusts the eyepiece of her hand-built quadrant. From this tiny tower room, the sky seems infinite. Her fingers trace familiar constellations, Ursa Major, Orion, Cassiopeia, as she sketches their movements with swift, careful lines. Amelia is no noble, no celebrated scholar. But she studies by night with the same reverence as the great men whose books line her shelves, Ptolemy, Albatani, Copernicus. She reads by day, calculates by evening, and watches the stars by night. She believes that truth hides in the patterns, and that patience will reveal it. Below her, the streets are silent. A lone candle flickers in the chapel near Jagiellonian University. Somewhere, a baker begins kneading dough for the morning bread. But all of that feels far away. Here, in this tower, only the stars speak. She reaches for a book of recent celestial observations, written in Latin, and finds the page she marked earlier. She's tracking a strange anomaly, a wandering star that doesn't match the old charts. It drifts with a will of its own, and she's beginning to suspect it may not be a star at all. Perhaps, a planet? She smiles quietly at the thought. Outside, the snow falls again, light and lazy. The sky clears enough for a sliver of moon to cast silver onto the city's frozen rooftops. Her ink begins to freeze in the bottle. She warms it with a touch of the lamp, then continues writing. Krakow has always been a place for learning. It carries the weight of old texts and quiet revolutions. In its dark corners, theories are whispered. In its quiet rooms, young minds like Emilia's ask the kinds of questions that pull the world forward, inch by inch. The flame in her lamp dances with the cold wind, but it does not go out. She sketches the moon's curve next, careful to note its shadows. The clock in the square strikes once, echoing through the stillness. Her cat, curled under the desk, shifts softly in its sleep. Emilia sighs and leans back. Her neck is stiff, her eyes tired. But her spirit is full. She closes the book, seals her latest chart with wax, and places it among the others, each a quiet testament to her midnight labor. She turns down the lamp and looks once more at the sky, now brighter with the coming dawn. The night air in Seville is warm, even under the quiet breath of stars. Orange trees line the narrow streets, their blossoms releasing a faint sweetness that lingers like a lullaby. The Renaissance in Spain flows not only through books and inventions, but through the strings of instruments, the hands of dancers, the soul of song. A small courtyard lies hidden behind carved wooden doors, tucked between tall stone homes washed in white and gold. Inside, the moonlight falls through the open ceiling, touching a tiled floor of blue and ochre. In the center, an elderly guitarist named Raphael sits on a stool, gently strumming a slow melody. He doesn't play for an audience anymore. Those days have passed. Now, he plays for memory, for the echoes of voices that once filled this courtyard with life. For the laughter of his wife, who tended the orange trees. For the footsteps of his children who ran through these very arches. His guitar is old but cared for, the wood polished and warm from years of music. The tune he plays is slow, wandering, almost like a conversation with the night. It mixes with the rustle of leaves and the soft creak of an old fountain, half filled with moonlight and petals. Seville sleeps, its palaces and gardens resting in a silken silence. Far off, a choir of monks chants in low harmony, faint, like a memory drifting through the alleys. Their voices rise and fall with the wind, blending into Raphael's melody like waves meeting the shore. He closes his eyes and lets the song take over. The courtyard becomes timeless. He's young again, playing for neighbors during fiestas. The Renaissance was never just about scholars in robes or painters in workshops. It was also in the rhythm of the street, the beat of the drum, the harmony of a single night under the stars. A cat jumps onto the low wall and watches silently. The lantern beside Raphael flickers, casting his silhouette against the tiled wall. The notes slow even more, becoming softer, as if not to disturb the trees. In a neighboring home, a young girl listens from her window. She doesn't know who plays. She only knows it makes her heart quiet. She holds her breath, not wanting the song to end. Raphael finishes the final chord, letting it fade into the courtyard's shadows. He sets the guitar down gently, as if it might wake if mishandled. Then he stands, slowly, stretches his back, and takes one last look at the stars overhead. He whispers a short prayer, not in words, but in feeling, and walks back inside. The guitar stays on the stool, still warm. The courtyard grows still again. The petals drift in the fountain. The lantern dims. And somewhere in the city, the girl who listened will remember this melody, years from now, as the night a song made her feel something she couldn't name. Seville turns in its sleep. And the music of the Renaissance plays on, soft and everlasting. In the lowlands of Bruges, the canals move like ink through the parchment of the city. Fog drapes the bridges, and the air is damp with the smell of wool and wood smoke. The streets are hushed, their stone paths slick and silver under the glow of moonlight. Lanterns swing gently on doorposts, casting sleepy golden halos across the water. Inside a narrow townhouse near the edge of the spinning quarter, a single window glows with life. Behind it, a weaver named Martha works at her loom, her fingers guiding thread in a rhythm as old as the wind. The world is asleep, but her mind is wide awake, each pattern unfolding like the lines of a quiet poem. The room is small, but every shelf and surface tells a story. Skeins of dyed yarn stacked by hue, carved shuttles lined up like soldiers, a pot of tea cooling on the hearth. On the wall, a drawing of a tapestry design is pinned, its delicate lines shaded in charcoal. She's been working on it for weeks, a scene of harvest, of family, of stillness. Her loom creaks softly, a familiar song of wood and fiber. It blends with the sounds outside, a distant bell, a drop of rain, the flutter of pigeons roosting beneath the eaves. Lofi in its truest form. No beats. Just breath. The Renaissance here isn't grand or loud. It's slow. Woven. Studied in patterns and passed between generations. Martha's mother taught her how to dye threads using madder root and indigo. Her grandmother showed her the knotting techniques used in Persian rugs. She carries their knowledge in her fingertips, her work filled with echoes. Tonight, she's finishing a border, tiny stars and vines surrounding a larger scene. Her eyes ache, but her heart is light. This cloth will be a wedding gift for her niece, who dreams of opening a cloth stall in the city square. Martha smiles to herself. That dream feels big. New. Renaissance in spirit. Outside, the canals reflect the sky. A duck quacks once and settles back into its feathers. The bakery across the water begins to stir. Early, quiet work for tomorrow's bread. The scent of rising dough curls through the mist. Martha leans back, runs her hands across the nearly finished fabric. It is soft, strong, precise. Like the night. She sets her shuttle down, covers her loom with cloth, and pours the last of her tea. She watches it steam, then fade. From her window, she sees the spire of the belfry through the fog. The clock doesn't chime this hour. But she knows the time by heart. Before she leaves the room, she lights a small beeswax candle and places it in the window. A tradition. A light to guide home any soul that may wander. Then she climbs the narrow stairs to sleep, her hands still tingling with the rhythm of weaving. Bruges sighs beneath its veils of mist. The Renaissance continues, quiet, domestic, enduring. Not in the halls of kings, but in the rooms of weavers, where love is stitched into every thread. The city of Basel sits gently along the Rhine, its towers casting shadows over the slow-moving river. At night, the water reflects not just the stars, but the thoughts of those who stay awake, questioning, wondering. In this Swiss town, half a crossroads, half a sanctuary, the Renaissance speaks through books, silence, and flame. On the top floor of a scholar's house near the university, a fire crackles softly in a tiled stove. The room is lined with books, many handwritten, some printed, their spines uneven and worn. A small glass bottle of ink rests near a parchment filled with notes, some in Latin, others in hurried scribbles that only the writer can understand. The philosopher's name is Jacob. Tonight, he sits near the window, wrapped in a thick wool cloak. His beard is short, peppered with ash gray. His candle flickers, casting slow, thoughtful shadows onto the ceiling beams. A storm has passed through earlier, and now only drizzled silence remains. Even the river seems hushed. He's been reading Erasmus. Earlier, he copied out a line he can't stop thinking about, give light, and the darkness will disappear of itself. The words circle in his mind like a quiet bell. Jacob doesn't teach in great halls. He speaks rarely at all. But his thoughts move like rivers, constant, winding, eroding the old banks. He's trying to understand something new about the soul, about freedom, about the harmony between reason and faith. Not to argue, but to reconcile. The rain begins again, soft as breath. It taps against the window like fingertips, and Jacob turns to listen. For him, these moments of stillness are the most fertile. Thought grows in silence, he believes. Like roots underground. Across the street, a lamplighter finishes his last rounds. The lamps glow dimly behind the fogged glass, their yellow light pooling like honey onto the wet stone. Somewhere below, A dog barks once, then settles back into sleep. Jacob stands and moves to the fireplace. He adds a log and watches the embers swell. It reminds him of the human spirit, quiet, hidden, but capable of catching flame again when fed with care. On his desk lies a letter from a fellow thinker in Paris. In it, a question: do you believe the world is truly changing, or only shifting its mask? Jacob hasn't answered yet. He wants to. But he needs to walk the thought a little further in his mind. He returns to his chair, pours a small cup of warmed wine, and opens a notebook. He begins to write, not for publication, not for praise, but simply to untangle what lives within him. Ink meets parchment in gentle strokes. Words, one by one, building something invisible but real. Outside, the city of Basel rests beneath the soft glow of early snowflakes. The river moves on, undisturbed. And in one quiet room, a philosopher writes by firelight, building bridges in silence. This, too, is the Renaissance. Lisbon breathes differently at night. The air carries the scent of salt and smoke, of spices just unloaded from ships docked at the edge of the known world. Waves lap softly against the harbor walls. Lanterns flicker across tiled streets, their reflections dancing in puddles from the evening rain. The sky is clear now, and the stars seem to lean a little closer over the Atlantic. In a quiet room above the harbor, a mapmaker named Duarte leans over a large table of vellum and instruments. His lantern casts a pool of golden light that rests gently on the surface of the map. Outside, the masts of ships sway and groan, wooden giants tethered in their dreams. Duarte dips his quill into ink and draws a delicate line along a blank coast. He's not guessing, he's trusting whispers brought by sailors, sketches drawn in charcoal on torn paper, fragments of what lies beyond the line where the world ends. His windows are open to the sea. He likes the sound of the waves. It reminds him that nothing he draws is static. That the ocean shifts, that borders change, that understanding is always unfinished. The Renaissance in Portugal feels different. It comes by ship. It arrives in crates of silk and porcelain, in scrolls from faraway ports, in conversations carried across decks in many tongues. It smells of saffron and ink, of salt and ambition. On the shelf behind him are older maps, ones passed down from teachers long gone. They are beautiful, but outdated. Duarte doesn't treat them as sacred. He treats them as steps. Each map is a guess, a hope, a beginning. He pauses to warm his hands near a brazier. The fire pops softly, echoing like a lullaby through the wooden room. A cat stretches beneath the table, yawning without concern. Outside, the foghorn of a distant vessel breaks the night for a moment, then fades. Duarte's wife sleeps in the next room, and so do his children. They don't fully understand what he does. To them, maps are just drawings. But to Duarte, they are quiet arguments with the unknown. They are proof that mystery still exists, and that humans, even in their silence, long to understand. He looks up at the stars. Polaris blinks just above the window frame. He's charted by it 100 times. He closes his eyes and imagines the ships that will use this map, crews that will never know his name, but who will trace his lines with hope. He bends over the table again and writes, in the bottom corner of the map, made by hand, in the year of our Lord, under a Lisbon sky. Nothing grand. Just the truth. As the candle burns low, he places the nearly finished chart in a drawer lined with cloth. He'll seal it with wax tomorrow. For now, he blows out the lantern, leaving the stars to guide the rest of the night. Lisbon hums. The ocean breathes. And in the quiet between waves, the future takes shape, line by line, drawn by steady hands. Antwerp sleeps under a pale blue haze, its cobblestone streets cooling beneath the weight of the night. The port has fallen quiet, crates tied shut, nets coiled neatly, sails furled like folded wings. A city of trade and movement has become, for a few hours, a place of stillness. The only sounds now are the distant echo of boots along the quay, the rustle of wind through linen, and the faint clicking of shutters. In a corner studio above a spice merchant's shop, an artist named Liv leans over a canvas, lit only by the soft breath of candlelight. Her fingers are stained with oil pigment, and her smock is flecked with ochres and deep ultramarines. The smell of linseed oil lingers in the warm air like incense. Outside, the fog from the Scheldt River has begun to roll in. The Renaissance here is colored in realism. Every petal, every cracked tile, every glint of metal, studied, captured, immortalized. Liv's current work is a still life. A copper kettle, half an orange, a crumpled lace cloth. But there is something more in it. A feeling. A hush. A thought left unspoken. She dips her brush, touches the canvas with the lightest motion. She isn't trying to finish tonight. She simply couldn't sleep. The quiet drew her in, as it always does, promising a deeper focus, a secret space where the world steps back. Below her, the docks creak under the weight of anchored dreams. A single lantern sways on a boat's mast, casting a wobbly reflection in the black water. Somewhere, a watchman sings a slow tune under his breath, low, wordless, like a lullaby for the city. Liv listens, but she doesn't stop. She mixes a bit more yellow into her brush and traces a highlight along the curve of the kettle. Then, she sits back and watches the candlelight flicker against the wet paint. It glistens for a moment, like morning light just beginning to rise. Her studio is modest but filled with care. Paintings are stacked against one wall. Portraits, landscapes, studies of fruit. On the windowsill, a small potted violet leans toward the moon. A cloth-covered lute rests in the corner, long untouched. Everything here has a role, even in silence. She sighs softly and sets the brush aside. This hour doesn't demand work, it invites reflection. She pours a small glass of watered wine and sips, gazing out the window. The spire of the Cathedral of Our Lady rises above the rooftops, its outline glowing faintly in the night fog. Liv remembers when she first arrived in Antwerp, young, unsure, but determined. The city had welcomed her quietly, like the night. It gave her space to become herself, one canvas at a time. She returns to the painting, covers it gently with cloth, and cleans her brushes with slow, careful movements. Then she lowers the lamp, leaving only the moonlight and the river's whisper to fill the space. Antwerp rests. And in one quiet room above the docks, art continues, unrushed, unseen, but deeply alive. Night in Padua moves like ink in water, slow, smooth, and darkly graceful. The university walls hold centuries of whispers, and under the gentle hush of midnight, the air is filled with a thoughtful kind of silence. Bells have long since stopped tolling. The city lies asleep, but in the Ordo Botanico, the oldest botanical garden in Europe, a few lanterns still burn. Alessandro, a young physician and scholar, walks quietly along the garden's central path. His cloak gathers dew from the air, and his boots crunch against gravel. He carries a notebook bound in leather and a small oil lamp that pools golden light over the margins of each page. He is here, as he is most nights, to think. Above him, Padua's stars emerge through a canopy of clouds. The garden is calm, rows of herbs, foreign and familiar, stretch in symmetry. Fennel and foxglove. Jasmine and juniper. Even now, their scent lingers. The Renaissance here is not painted or carved, it grows. It roots, it blooms, it heals. Alessandro pauses before a row of mandragora. The leaves shiver gently in the breeze. He scribbles a note, observed signs of recovery in extract distillation. Hypothesis, nighttime temperatures strengthen potency. His breath curls in the cold. From the nearby wall, the rustle of ivy sounds like the slow turning of pages. The garden itself feels alive, as though it listens, remembers, responds. Inside the main building, students sleep in shared quarters, their notes and sketches left open on desks beside flickering candles. Books lie with spines cracked open, Latin phrases underlined in haste. Some have fallen asleep while reading. The Renaissance mind does not easily rest. But Alessandro prefers the outdoors. He believes ideas breathe better under the stars. He moves to a small greenhouse at the edge of the garden, unlocking the door with care. Inside, heat clings to the glass walls. Exotic plants, brought from voyages to the east, curl in the dark like dreaming creatures. He checks their moisture, their leaves, their stems. He murmurs to them, as though they understand. Someday, he whispers to himself, we will know all of this. Not just how to grow it, but why it helps. Why it heals. He returns to the path and sits on a low stone bench, his lamp now dim. The moon reflects off the glass dome of the observatory beyond the garden. He thinks of his teacher, who once told him, knowledge grows best where there is peace. And here, in this sacred quiet, that feels true. He sketches the leaf of a plant he cannot name. Perhaps tomorrow he will cross-check it with the herbarium. Or perhaps it doesn't yet have a name. He likes that idea, that even now, in this age of rediscovery, mystery still lingers in the soil. The garden hums. Not loudly, but with that gentle tension of potential, the feeling that beneath every root is a secret, and under every silence, a truth. Alessandro closes his notebook. He walks slowly back through the gate, past the stone arch carved with Latin ver. Strasbourg, nestled on the Rhine, shimmers in the quiet of the late hour. The streets of the old quarter are drowsy under pale starlight, their half-timbered houses leaning toward each other like old friends whispering in sleep. Fog drifts low over the canals, muffling sound and softening even the sharpest corners of the night. In a narrow stone workshop near the Strasbourg Cathedral, an old clockmaker named Dietrich adjusts his lenses and peers into the brass heart of a timepiece. The glow of his oil lamp dances over hundreds of tiny gears spread across his workbench, catching flecks of gold and pewter. Tick, tick, tick. The workshop is filled with the soothing rhythm of winding mechanisms. Clocks of all sizes rest on shelves, some grand and baroque, others simple and carved from walnut. Time, in this room, has a personality. It clicks and breathes and hums. Outside, the city bell tower looms. Its great astronomical clock, a wonder of Renaissance invention, sleeps for now, waiting to strike the next hour. Dietrich once worked on that clock. He still visits it every Sunday, just to listen. He says it sounds different than the others. More alive. He tightens a screw, rotates a dial, then stops to sip a cup of thin wine warmed by the fire. His hands are steady, though his hair is silver. He's been doing this since he was a boy, apprenticed to a master who claimed every timepiece had a soul. Dietrich believed it then, and still does now. The Renaissance here is mechanical, wheels within wheels, symbols drawn from the stars, logic folded into brass. It's a poetry of function. A harmony built on precision. A soft knock sounds at the door. Dietrich looks up, surprised. Few visit at this hour. He opens it to find his young apprentice, Mathis, bundled in a thick cloak, cheeks red from the cold. I couldn't sleep, Mathis says with a sheepish shrug. Dietrich smiles and gestures him inside. Then learn. Mathis steps into the warm glow of the workshop. He moves to the side table and examines a broken sundial, while Dietrich returns to his ticking universe. They work in near silence, save for the gentle clinking of tools and the creak of leather-bound manuals being opened. Now and then, Dietrich explains a mechanism, why a gear needs space to breathe, how sound travels through a bell's bronze. The hours pass unnoticed. At one point, Dietrich lifts a small completed clock and holds it to his ear. He nods. It's ready, he says softly. He winds it once, sets it on the sill. It begins ticking steadily, echoing the rhythm of 1,000 quiet hours lived in this workshop. Outside, the sky begins to lighten, just a thread of silver at the edge of the rooftops. Mathis, eyes heavy, leans back in his chair. Do clocks dream? He asks, only half joking. Dietrich chuckles. Only when we're not listening. And then he dims the lamp. The clocks tick on, lulled by the coming dawn. In this sleepy corner of Strasbourg, time is not a master, it's a companion. Lisbon at night is a soft swell of waves against stone quays, sea mist curling into alleyways, and tiled walls reflecting lantern light like scattered stars. The ships in the harbor sway gently, their sails furled, their decks quiet, as if holding their breath for the morning tide. High above the docks, in a small room at the edge of Alfama, a cartographer named Ignacio leans over a wide oak table. His window is open, letting in the salty breeze of the Atlantic. Maps cover the walls, curving coastlines, dotted archipelagos, faraway ports inked with precision and wonder. The Renaissance in Portugal feels like wind, restless, brave, and full of motion. Explorers sail into the unknown, and Ignacio, though he never leaves Lisbon, follows every journey from his desk. He charts their courses by starlight, compass, and careful letters sent back from distant lands. Tonight, he is drawing the western coast of Africa, adding details from a recent navigator's log. A cluster of islands, a shifting sandbank, a river that glows red in the sunset. He doesn't rush. Each line is deliberate. The scratch of his quill blends with the quiet creak of the city at rest. Behind him, an oil lantern glows steady and golden. The flame flickers with every draft, but never dies. His tools, a brass compass, a length of string, jars of ink in muted browns and blues, are laid out in neat rows. Nearby, a half-finished globe rests on a stand, its ocean still blank, waiting for discovery. Down below, a fado melody drifts faintly from a tavern, melancholy and slow. It wraps around the night like a shawl, old and familiar. Ignacio hums softly, not even aware he's doing it. A cat leaps onto the windowsill and curls itself into a loaf. It watches him work with blinking eyes, content to be where there is light and calm. He pauses to stretch, hands aching slightly. Then he picks up a parchment filled with tiny notes, written in another navigator's hand. Antonio, a friend who sailed months ago toward the Spice Coast. The paper smells faintly of clove. With a ruler and a steady hand, Ignacio traces the coastline, adjusting the longitude with care. He doesn't think of the sea as dangerous. To him, it's a puzzle, a shifting mirror of the sky, waiting to be understood. In the corner of the room, a time-worn cabinet holds older maps. Some are already outdated, territories corrected, names changed. He glances at them sometimes, not with regret, but with affection. They're like old thoughts, stepping stones to something truer. As the candle burns lower, he sets down his quill and looks out over the rooftops of Lisbon. The horizon is hidden in fog, but he imagines what lies beyond: palm trees, unfamiliar stars, new coastlines still forming in someone's memory. He whispers a short prayer for the sailors far from home, then folds the newest map and places it gently in a scroll case. Another piece of the world, charted under the quiet hum of night. Ignacio closes the window. Granada sleeps beneath a quilt of shadow and moonlight. The Alhambra towers above the city, its stone walls tinted silver, its arches holding centuries of stories in their curve. In the narrow streets below, water murmurs in the ancient channels, winding past gardens and fountains that still remember the Moors. In one small courtyard behind a wooden door, hidden between whitewashed walls, an alchemist sits alone by a low table. His name is Yusuf, and he is not as young as he once was. His hands are marked with burns and ink stains, and his beard is threaded with gray. But his eyes still shine with wonder. Tonight, he works beneath the stars, his tools spread out before him like a ritual: glass alembics, a mortar of rose quartz, strips of parchment covered in geometric diagrams, and a coal burner flickering gently beneath a copper still. The courtyard smells of orange blossoms and sulfur, of earth and heated stone. Ivy creeps up the walls. Crickets sing softly from the garden, and the occasional flutter of a bat passes overhead, swift and silent. Yusuf's work is quiet. He's long past the pursuit of turning lead to gold. Now he studies essence, distillations of nature, the transformation of one thing into another. He believes that the world is made of correspondence. Fire and passion. Water and memory. Air and thought. He heats a vessel filled with crushed myrtle, watching as vapor begins to rise. The lid of the still rattles softly. He adjusts it with a cloth, then records the process in a notebook by candlelight, each line a thread of thought winding into his mind. The Renaissance came to Spain through many doors, through Moorish knowledge, through Jewish scholars, through books rescued from burning, through conversations whispered across faiths. Yusuf has seen it all. He has taught students of every belief, under the same sky. Tonight, his courtyard is a world unto itself. The marble tiles beneath his feet are cool. The vines move as though breathing. And on the table beside him sits a small jar, last week's distillation of laurel and honey. He opens it, inhales gently, and smiles. The scent is memory itself. A cat appears in the doorway and slips inside, brushing against Yusuf's leg. He doesn't mind. He believes animals understand alchemy in their own way. The cat sits beside the burner, eyes reflecting the glow of the fire, as if guarding some ancient knowledge. Yusuf hums softly, an old Andalusian tune his mother used to sing, and pours the condensed essence into a glass bottle. The moonlight catches the liquid and turns it to gold, just for a moment. He seals it with wax and sets it beside the others. Each one is labeled in Arabic and Latin, marked with the date, the hour, and the moon's phase. Some people seek truth in books, Yusuf thinks, but others find it in the way water boils or a flower opens. Alchemy is a language without words, a way to listen to the world more deeply. The canals of Bruges lie still beneath the moon, their waters glassy and dark, mirroring the steep gables of the old merchant houses. Not a single ripple breaks the surface, only the gentle flicker of lanterns dances along the banks, where roses sleep curled against cobblestone walls. Inside a narrow house with tall windows, a woman named Anneliese leans over her embroidery frame. The room is hushed, the fire low, the only sound the tick of a small iron clock and the thread slipping through fabric. Her candle flickers beside her hand, casting soft shadows across the linen. She is not working for coin tonight. The piece in her hands is for her daughter, a bridal cloth of white silk, carefully stitched with silver thread. Tiny fleurs de lis. A border of lace. A single dove tucked near the corner. Every loop, every knot, every pass of the needle carries a memory, a wish, a prayer stitched in silence. The Renaissance in Bruges whispers, not shouts. It hides in the intricacies of tapestries, in the delicate brushwork of Van Eyck, in the quiet wealth of wool and trade. It lives in the stillness of skill. In the patience of a practiced hand. Anneliese hums a lullaby, the same one she once sang over a crib by the window. Her daughter is grown now, asleep upstairs, dreaming of a new life soon to begin. Anneliese's fingers do not falter, they've known this rhythm for decades. Embroidery is not just art to her. It is memory passed from mother to daughter like a breath. Outside, the city dozes in velvet dark. Swans drift beneath stone bridges. The cathedral bells remain silent. Even the wind seems to walk on tiptoe tonight. On the mantel above the fire rests a small box. Inside it are scraps of her grandmother's stitching, fragments too delicate to use, too precious to forget. Anneliese keeps them close. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the candle burns low, she opens the lid just to look. Needlework, she believes, holds a kind of time that clocks do not. A single row of stitching can hold hours of thought, dreams folded between loops of silk. She sets down her work for a moment and stretches her neck. The candle's flame sways with her breath, sending golden patterns across the walls. In this gentle light, even shadows look like they're resting. From a nearby chair, her old dog lifts his head, ears twitching. He watches her with quiet loyalty, then sighs and settles back down. Annalise picks up her thread again, carefully guiding the silver across the silk. Each movement is a lullaby. Each stitch a vow. There is no rush. No one is waiting for it tonight. Only the night itself watches her, holding its breath while she works. And when the last thread is tied, when the cloth is folded and placed in its linen wrap, she leans back in her chair and closes her eyes. The candle still burns, slow and steady. And Bruges, with all its quiet beauty, holds her gently in its arms. Verona's rooftops shimmer under the starlight, their terracotta tiles warm from the day's heat, now gently cooling in the night breeze. The city, famous for love and lyric, sleeps under a hush of silver tones. Only the Adige River speaks softly now, curling through the city like a lullaby sung in water. In a courtyard tucked behind an old stone church, the bellmaker's workshop glows faintly from within. The forge has long cooled, and the hammers rest silent on their racks. But inside, the bellmaker, Matteo, sits at a wooden bench, surrounded by sketches, notes, and small bronze pieces, like a clockmaker who works not for time but for sound. Tonight is not for casting. It is for thinking. For remembering. Matteo runs his hands over the edge of a small, unfinished bell. Its shape is perfect, but it waits for a voice, its final tuning, that delicate shaping of tone that turns metal into music. He closes his eyes and listens, not to the bell, but to the night. A wind stirs the olive tree in the courtyard. A dog barks once in the distance. Somewhere, a nightingale sings. He reaches for a tuning rod and taps the bell gently. A soft, hollow note rings out, not quite right. He nods to himself, satisfied that he is close. He writes something down in the margins of a worn notebook, a correction, a calculation, a small prayer. The Renaissance in Verona is built not only in stone and verse but in resonance. Music flows through its streets, through lutes, choirs, cathedral bells. Sound is sculpture, cast in air. Matteo walks to the open door of his workshop and looks out into the courtyard. The moonlight reflects off the surface of an old anvil, worn by years of work. His father once stood here. His grandfather too. The molds hanging from the rafters still bear their initials. This quiet night, with its subtle shadows and gentle wind, feels like a conversation between generations. He returns to the bench and picks up a chisel. Slowly, he begins to shave the bell's inner lip, adjusting the shape by a fraction. Each scrape releases a faint, dusty smell of metal. Each movement is steady, unhurried. A kind of lofi rhythm in the breath of the workshop. Verona sleeps outside his walls, but inside, sound is gently forming. As he works, he thinks of the bells he has made, those hanging high in towers, rung for weddings, for harvests, for mourning. He remembers the face of a widow who touched one of his bells and whispered, "It sounds like the sky sighing." That is what he aims for again. The final note, when it comes, is almost imperceptible. He taps the bell once more, and this time the tone is warm, round, full, like the night itself saying good evening. He smiles and sets it down on the cloth. Tomorrow, the bell will be polished, fitted, and sent to the chapel downriver. But tonight, it will sleep here, as he does, under the watchful hush of the stars. Verona dreams. The bell waits. Florence, cloaked in the quiet of midnight, feels like a city exhaling. Its grand domes and bell towers rise into the night sky like sleeping giants. The sounds of the day, merchants, masons, artists, have all faded into memory. Now, only the gentle brushing of cypress branches and the occasional hoot of an owl disturb the stillness. Beyond the city walls, nestled near a modest hillside chapel, a small monastery keeps its own rhythm. Among its cloisters and stone paths, one garden remains lit by lantern, a flickering glow among rosemary and sage. Brother Silvano walks barefoot between the herb beds, hands clasped behind his back. His brown robe brushes the dew-kissed grass. His steps are slow, meditative. Each plant has a name, a purpose, a story. And tonight, he listens to them all. He stops at the valerian, its leaves pale in the moonlight, and leans close. The fragrance is soft, earthy, calming, an herb for dreams, for letting go. He gently snips a few leaves, placing them in a basket slung over his arm. The garden is a notebook, he often says. One written by God, read in the silence of the heart. Inside the monastery, others sleep. Some rest deeply, others wrestle quietly with thoughts. Brother Silvano's teas have helped many here, infusions of lavender for grief, chamomile for restlessness, mint for sadness that clings too tightly. Tonight, he prepares something new. In a warm little apothecary room lined with jars and folded linens, he sets a kettle over coals and begins his mixture. He crushes fennel seeds with a small mortar, adds thyme, rose hips, and a touch of dried pear. His hands move with practiced gentleness, never rushed, always listening. Outside, the stars drift like candle smoke above the dark hills. A fox passes silently by the chapel gate, leaving no trace but a few bent blades of grass. Brother Silvano pours the steaming water over the herbs, then carries the pot to a small wooden table. He sets out 4 cups, tonight's tea is for sharing. He has invited the youngest monk, Luca, who has been struggling with anxious dreams. And 2 elders who cannot sleep well in the heat of summer. When they arrive, the 4 sit quietly, the warm drink in hand, the lantern casting soft shadows on the stone walls. They say little. A few words about the weather, a smile shared over the memory of a poorly sung hymn. But mostly, they simply breathe in peace together. The tea works slowly, like the stars turning above. A warmth that begins in the belly and then opens into the mind. Luca relaxes into the chair. One of the elders begins to hum softly. Brother Silvano closes his eyes, his hands resting on the smooth grain of the table. For him, healing is not a miracle, it is a rhythm, like breath, like dusk. It's the stillness between thoughts. The pause between bells. When the others return to their cells, the monk remains for a while, cleaning the cups, sealing the herbs in cloth. In Venice, where the canals reflect starlight like polished obsidian, there exists a hidden chamber above a quiet convent library. By day, it is locked. By night, it breathes. The old scriptorium, long forgotten by most, still holds its purpose. Here, under an arched ceiling and beams blackened by time, illuminated manuscripts rest on wooden lecterns, whispering in Latin and Greek. Dust floats in the air, and the scent of parchment is warm and familiar. Tonight, an old copyist named Fra Emilio returns. He's long retired from active service, but something in his bones draws him back. His candle burns softly in the stillness, and the rustle of his robes is the only sound. He opens a scroll of psalms, written in gold and faded blue. His fingers trace the careful calligraphy, and his eyes mist not from age, but reverence. Venetian nights are often lively, music from passing gondolas, the echo of footsteps on stone. But here, in this forgotten perch above the cloisters, the world feels paused. Time itself holds its breath. Fra Emilio dips his pen into ink. Not to copy, not tonight. Instead, he begins a letter, a quiet record of memory. My hands have trembled for many years, he writes, but the letters still know their shape. He writes about the sound of gulls over the lagoon at dawn. The shimmer of light through stained glass during Massachusetts. The way Sister Caterina used to hum as she passed by the library door, always slightly out of tune. He writes not for others, but for the silence. To offer something back to it. A page of gratitude to the hush that shaped his life. On the desk beside him lies an hourglass. He flips it once, its sand flowing with a whisper. The passing of time becomes an instrument, part of the composition. A moth flutters near the candle, and he gently shields the flame. It's a small act, but one of kindness. Everything tonight is slow and gentle, like the movement of tides. Outside the high window, the moon floats above Venice's rooftops. Bells in the distance ring softly, a marker of the hour, but not a command. Fra Emilio pauses. His back aches. But his heart is light. He seals the letter with wax, presses a simple emblem, a lily, and places it into a small wooden box alongside other scrolls and parchments. A lifetime of quiet testimony. A library within a library. Before he leaves, he refills the inkwell and sharpens the quill. A gesture of hospitality for whoever may come next. Perhaps no one will. Or perhaps, years from now, another hand will sit where he sat, and listen to the same hush. As he steps into the corridor, the candle dims behind him. The scriptorium returns to silence. The scrolls sleep once more. And outside, Venice dreams beneath her stars, unaware of the quiet soul who wrote her into memory. The last stars of the night blink faintly above Florence as dawn begins to warm the horizon. The sky, once velvet blue, shifts toward a gentle rose gold. The Arno River flows soft and slow, carrying with it the hush of centuries. In a modest room tucked beneath the roof tiles of an old stone building, a lute rests in the arms of a young musician. His name is Luca. He is not famous, not yet, and perhaps never will be. But tonight, his last night in Florence, he plays a melody he's been writing for weeks. He has no parchment, no ink. Only strings, breath, and memory. Florence, the beating heart of the Renaissance, is filled with the names of giants, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Machiavelli. But below their towering shadows live lives just as real, just as vibrant. Lives like Luca's. His music drifts through the open shutters, gentle and thoughtful. The city listens in its sleep, stone walls and statues catching the sound, cradling it. The tune is not triumphant. It is wistful. A goodbye wrapped in lullabies. Beneath him, the streets are still. Markets haven't opened. Bakers are only now kindling fires. The city is paused in that quietest moment, when night and morning sit side by side, neither fully gone nor fully arrived. Luca's room is simple, a wooden bed, a woven rug, a small table with a single oil lamp now flickering low. On the wall, a faded sketch, done by a friend, now gone north to Padua. The sketch shows Luca, laughing, a lute in his lap. He plucks another chord. The final verse of the melody takes shape. It rises, falls, then rests on a single lingering note that echoes in the stillness. This room has held his late-night musings, his failures, his sparks of joy. It has heard whispered verses and the clatter of dropped plectrums. Now, it listens to silence. Luca places the lute gently into its case. He closes the latch with care. He stands at the window one last time. From this spot, he has watched countless nights stretch across the Florentine sky, festivals, fireworks, lightning storms. But nothing compares to the quiet. This quiet, just before morning, when the world resets and breathes anew. Far in the distance, the dome of the Duomo catches the first light, its curve glowing like a new coin. Birds begin to stir in the terracotta eaves. The city is waking. Luca takes one final look, then pulls the shutters closed. The echo of his music lingers in the air like incense, faint, warm, and unforgettable. And as he steps away from the room, from the night, from this chapter of life, Florence holds his memory gently, just as it has held so many others. A quiet night. A final note. A gentle farewell to the Renaissance.